It is September 2nd, 2024, and I'm out here in New Mexico, about to head from Santa Fe out to Coyote to see the wonderful poet and multi-talented artist, Natachee Momaday Gray. Now, how I got here is emblematic pretty much of how I get everywhere, and it usually starts with a story, and in this case, it was books. When I started reading Willa Cather, I was not ready for how much she wrote about the American Southwest. And in The Professor's House and Song of the Lark, I was really captured by her descriptions of the landscapes and the cultures of the Southwest. But it wasn't until I read Death Comes for the Archbishop that I was like, I have to go see this place. I have to bear witness to its natural beauty and these cultures. It was a desire that had to be satisfied at that point. So I decided to plan a road trip from North Carolina to California to see my family, and along the way, one of my stops would be in New Mexico. And I had to come particularly to where I am now, in the northern part of the state, Taos and Santa Fe, because that's where Death Comes for the Archbishop is set. And that stop was one of the most monumental of my life. To be able to feel that gentle ambient light, to be under that blue sky that is a shade of blue that I've never seen before nor after I went there, and to feel simultaneously completely exposed and completely hidden was a really unique feeling. And it was one of those first feelings being in New Mexico that you wish you could live and feel over and over and over again. And it was on that trip that I said to myself, this is the only place I would live if it weren't in Appalachia, in North Carolina, where I do now. So when I got back to North Carolina, I was motivated to read more stories about New Mexico. And I realized at that point that I had not given enough attention to indigenous stories and indigenous authors, filmmakers from New Mexico. As good as Willa Cather is, and as much as I love her, she is a white woman from Nebraska who spent most of her adult life on the East Coast. And even though she has an attachment to the Southwest and writes about it beautifully, that is not enough. And that is not the full picture of the Southwest. And this was yet another reminder that when you're curious about a place, whether you only read about it or you also visit it and you want to understand it more, you always have to ask the questions. Who am I not hearing from? Whose voice do I need to listen to? And whose perspective and lens do I need to see this place through? And just by opening up yourself with those questions, they're going to lead you on a good way. And they're going to lead you to the people whose stories you need to hear. And so that's what I did. I began the search. And it was on that search that I found my way to Natachee Momaday Gray's book of poetry, Silverbox. And I absolutely loved it. It is a little book that holds so much within it. And reading her words made me want to know more about her life. And the more I learned, I felt so compelled to reach out to her and ask her to do Books on the Bed. And I'm so grateful that she said yes. I really admire Natachee's creative life, and that she has not let the world define her and what she does, who she's going to become. It's a really hard thing to do, and if you can't tell, I'm really drawn to those people. And there's a warmness to her spirit that I feel like all of you are going to connect with, and it's going to make this conversation so special. And to think I found my way to this tiny dot on the map in New Mexico, all because I was willing to search a little bit deeper and go a little bit further than even I normally would to find stories. Those are the kinds of tiny miracles that are the good stuff of life. And there's not much better. And I will never take for granted the generosity of people welcoming me into their homes and sharing their stories with me. It's the greatest gift. And I can't wait to share all that we talk about today with you. You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. So thank you for having me here. The first thing I do with everybody, though, is start with gifts.
Okay.
Because you've given us gifts with your poetry and now bringing me here and welcoming me into your home. And I think it's important to recognize that. So we're going to start with 2 gifts for you. The first one, and I want to say I typically wrap these at our bookstore in North Carolina, but I couldn't get there before I had to go to the airport. So I was a little all out of sorts, so I had to do a little bit of a makeshift for the first one.
Oh, wow.
But this one is a poetry book.
Okay.
Because I felt like, okay, well, I've read your poetry, and let's do a 1-for-1 here with another person that I know that's important to me. And we were just talking about her. That was my last interview.
Oh, wow. Oh, how cool.
So Mildred
What
is...
an awesome cover.
Yeah, isn't it great?
So cool, yeah.
The reason I chose this is one of my gifts to her was the Earthkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
there's something about this book that I feel like you'll appreciate with Mildred's eye and observation for animals, and not even just appreciating them in the abstract, but just how important nature is to protect and preserve, and that we should treat it like we do each other. Is that reflects how we treat each other, is how we treat the land. So a lot of these poems refer back to her childhood in Uganda, which is a very agricultural place,
Yeah.
Kabale. And some of them are now more contemporary, being in Asheville. But I think you'll really appreciate her words about the land and about animals and nature.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to read that. Beautiful. Thank you.
And the second one is very different,
Okay.
but I will explain once again why I think
Okay.
it would be something you'd enjoy.
Nice wrapping. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, and I always forget to do this, but The Animals of My Earth School by Mildred Baria. I always forget to say the titles because I'm just... forget people are listening and not looking at it.
Yeah. Moonrise over New Jessup.
Yep, so Jamila Minix is one of the most beautiful authors I've met over the last few years, and this is her debut novel.
Wow.
And the reason I got this for you, it just seems like with your family, there is a really, really important, urgent need and understanding that like where you come from is vital to who you are now. And that what you make is because of all the people that came before you. And so Jamila, this is about a town in Alabama that is all black in the 1950s and is actually fighting segregation because they want to be able to have their own autonomy as a black community. And so this whole story is centered on New Jessup, Alabama, and love between each other and the black community and wanting the best for each other at a time that it was really racially violent. But the reason is like Jamila didn't grow up in Alabama, and she was always looking for those roots in the same way that I know your family has always really been connected to this land. And even in your mom's work, right, and your grandfather's work, all of it's about appreciating your past. And so that's what she's doing in this story, is writing about a place she didn't grow up, but where she came from in Alabama. And it's a really, really beautiful novel.
Wow. Amazing. When did this come out?
Just 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to interview her at the Mississippi Book Festival,
Cool.
and I was just sold. She's such a great person.
And this is her debut.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she wrote it while
Thank
being
you.
a lawyer in D.C. I think she said she'd wake up at 4 in the morning
Yeah.
and write before her job. And so she got a prize that was able to put this out in the world, and she's rolling with it. And so I'm
Wow.
excited to see what she writes next. But I just feel like, yeah, you'll appreciate the affection she has for her history and where
Yeah.
her family comes from.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Wow.
course. I hope you enjoy them.
Thank you. Was not expecting gifts. That is amazing. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to get into both of those. Wow.
Yeah. It's always hard to choose because there was like so many things that I thought to get you. But similar with your stacks of books, I'm like,
Yeah.
just choose them.
Yeah.
Right? There's always going to be an intention behind
Yeah.
it. So,
And I love that they're just like, they're obviously so different, from
Yeah.
like different spectrums.
Yep.
It's,
yeah, I also don't like mirroring what you wrote
yeah.
or what your family's written. Like, I just want it to be, like, it have the same themes or things you'd appreciate. But one of my goals with the gifts is to bring other regions of the country to each other. Because sometimes it can be hard to find out about books in Alabama when you
Sure.
live in Washington, because you're kind of in your own ecosystem of writing. And I've brought a lot of stories from this region to people. You're on my staff picks at City Lights Bookstore in Sylva, North Carolina,
Wow.
alongside so many other authors from other regions, because we have to see each other. And
Yeah,
that's what this
yeah.
is all about, the whole project. And so being here, it's like, okay, well, now you can know a couple more new authors and people will know you.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and now that we're talking about family and history, before we get to the books on the bed, I always like to have a personal conversation about place and personal history and your work as well, which is really interesting because you haven't been siloed in any one thing. And I really love when people pursue art without worrying about what are they? Am I a poet? Am I a novelist? Am I a singer? Like, you do a lot of stuff. Am I wrong, or you're a bookbinder as well?
I have done. Before I released like my first chapbooks and stuff, I always did like just like I bound my own books and I printed my own books and I just sort of like put them out there, kind of in the same sentiment as like a zine or something,
Yeah.
and just like putting it somewhere and someone finding it and being like, "What the heck is this?"
Oh, I love that. It is so cool. Yeah, like what a surprise,
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. But yeah, I just think that you reflect so much of your family because y'all are talented in many different ways. You've all made art through so many different mediums. I mean, gosh, even just in this room alone today, how many things we've talked about between music and writing. And, I think that's what's really great about you. And I was so excited to talk to you because of you made your own way, but you had a very strong influence from your family.
Definitely.
And I think that's such a special thing and sometimes rare for people to have that kind of love coming from family and inspiration, but also enough not to feel like you have to be them. So I have a couple things here that I found.
Okay.
We have several pictures of your family here. I don't know if this is your great grandfather or
Great grandfather. Yes.
Yes.
That is Momaday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I found that tracing this lineage was really interesting. And here is your namesake.
Yes.
She grew up in Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Or was born in Kentucky.
Yes.
And became an artist and a writer and a teacher. And if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, just over the mountains.
Yes, in Jemez, in the Pueblo.
And was a teacher at a school there, right? It was
Yeah.
her and Al that
And
were
Al.
the only staff members of the school. Is that right?
Yes, they were, they sort of founded this day school in the Jemez Pueblo, and they taught, and they loved it. And my great-grandmother, she loved anything having to do with literature and art and teaching and children. And yeah, she was an incredible person. And I had the privilege of being able to meet her when I was just born.
Oh, wow.
And then she passed not too long after.
I didn't know that.
I just feel like it was meant to be, that I came into this world right before she left. I was named after her,
Yeah.
and I feel very, very close to her. I always have. And a lot of the things, even just in this house, belonged to her or somehow reflect what she did, how she lived, what she loved. And I think in a lot of ways, I sort of subconsciously, but also very consciously, sort of carry on her legacy. And that's really something that's really important to me. And even people who knew her or knew of her who meet me, they say that somehow I embody her, or I remind them of her or carry on her, what she was all about.
How
So,
special is that?
Yeah.
To have that like instant recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was a teacher and a writer. She had a children's book that was really important.
Yes.
Talk about how, and we'll get to more immediate family,
Okay.
but I love this long history of artists and writers and teachers in your family. And like I said, you can't find everything out about someone on the internet.
Sure.
But it seems like her spirit is a real guide for you. Because you mentioned you talk to her or that you hear her. And how does the way that she lived, how has that influenced you, especially in a modern world where you can lose your past really easily?
Well, I think that in so many ways, I am a very spiritual person. I grew up in a very spiritual family, and we're all, as you picked up on, very connected to our roots. And this is on my mom's side, but also on my dad's side. My dad is Apache, and he's from the Jicarilla Reservation, which is really close actually to here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right.
Just like past Chama over that way. So
Wow, you really are close to all these places.
yes, yes. And I think, side note, this is sort of also why I was so called to here and why it feels so natural to just like be living here, even though, you know, to some it's like, why? Or you're out in the middle of nowhere. Why do you feel so at home and so at peace in this place? But yeah, back to my grandmother, my great grandmother. I think she and I have this sort of cosmic unspoken bond, and I grew up learning a lot about her, having, you know, my grandfather always talked about her. My mother was actually extremely close with her grandmother, my great grandmother. And there was a time, mostly when she was pregnant with me, but also before, when my great grandmother's health was ailing and she was living in Jemez, and my mom would travel to her and make the drive there from Santa Fe, and they would have these like beautiful banquets, and she would bring wine and cheese, and they'd have these like beautiful, like big drawn out lunches and tea parties. And my mom is she also has this very deep connection with her and to her. So a lot of the stories come from my mother that were passed down directly from her or from her dad. And I was always just so interested in my great grandmother's spirit, because she was just so, in a lot of ways, ahead of her time. And she was so artistic and beautiful and headstrong, and she was like this like little tiny woman who was just like so spicy and like such a hellraiser. And a lot of those stories I just are so close to my heart, and I loved learning about them. And one of the books that is really important to me that I actually don't have here, and I couldn't find, is The Names, which is, it recounts a lot of our familial history. And that, to me, sort of like was the beginning of me delving into my family history that wasn't just like passed down from my mom or like told to me firsthand from my grandparents, but it's like something that's available, that, and it's just like this incredible like long familial history that is like a family tree that goes back and back and back and back. And I know for my grandpa it required a lot of really deep research and diving into all of that is incredibly poignant and beautiful, but also in a lot of ways painful.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and something I was thinking about that I remember reading was when she taught, it was child experience based.
Mm.
She was bringing these new methods to teaching Native children because you can't do it on a white syllabus, right? Which, now that's a really big topic of integrating more stories and teaching to where people come from. Like one of my friends who teaches at Jackson State in Mississippi, she doesn't have her majority Black students try to write a certain way in their first year composition class because it doesn't reflect how they've spoken and written for their entire life.
Yeah.
So it's like the very first thing she wants to do is just express themselves honestly. And so when I was reading this, I just thought about how important, even way back then, like pedagogically, to have these children understand that their history, their heritage, who they are, matters in this world. And to have that coming from a teacher could change someone's life. So
yeah. And I think especially too at that age when you're a child, to have somebody identify with you and to say that all of these things are really important when most of society and most of the world takes that away, kind of, and the identity. And yeah, I mean, I could see that she would think that that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about that period, but
yeah. I just think it's cool that they were teaching like not that far from here.
yeah.
I really wanted to go before this, but it would have been like just long enough that I don't know that it would have been smart to do it and then like come all the way around the mountains. It's not how far is it from here?
From here, it's about, I would say you could get there in an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, not too far, but it is like around.
Maybe I'll go on the way back.
Yeah. It's a very unique place.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in quite a while, but, actually I made a trip with my mom not too long ago to go through my grandpa's storage after he passed. That was really heavy. Yeah, my grandpa had this amazing house, just like there's like a little strip that's kind of like in the main area of Jemez Springs, and he had the most incredible magical house. And I just remember going there when I was a kid, and all the cousins and my sister and all the kids would be around, and we'd have these huge like family holidays and stuff there. And yeah, he called it Stonehenge. And I'm not really sure where that came from or why he called it that, but I always thought that my grandpa's house was Stonehenge growing up.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, your grandfather is such an important person. But I think that what's beautiful about it is it's not just him, that you take after. Your mother is clearly very influential in who you are. You grew up in the same house she grew up in. So it's like, you're close to Santa Fe now, but you're also close to all these other places that your family has lived and made art. So I'm curious, what about your entire family's influence on your life made you want to be this close to everything? As you said, sometimes things can be painful to look back, but what's been really interesting in this project is to see how many people have taken that on and in fact moved closer to their history, even when they did run away. So like, what made you stay and not want to go off and go other places and rid yourself from this history? What's made it so special to learn about your past that made you want to stay?
That's such a loaded question.
Yeah.
Like right after high school, pretty much I did leave for a while, and I was really set on not going to college. I just I didn't feel that pull, and I felt like it was sort of like expected of me, and that I would I don't know, in some ways follow in my grandpa's footsteps and go to an Ivy League school or something. And that really never appealed to me too much. And I really wanted to just travel. For a while, I went to UNM, and that was sort of just to appease, certain people in my life, my family. And at a certain point, I was kind of just like, this doesn't fit with what I want to do, and I'm not doing this for any of the right reasons. I never went to class. I was always, my mind was somewhere else. There wasn't anything that was like holding me there. So I was like, why am I doing this? And at a certain point, I got through 2 years, and then I was just like, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna travel. My boyfriend at the time sort of had a similar mindset, and we were living in Albuquerque, and we decided, like, let's just pool our money together, what little we have, and pack up our Subaru and just drive. And so we sort of did like a road trip through all of the states, and we were on the road for a couple of years, and that was really like a turning point in my life. And it was such an incredible experience, and it was really hard, and a lot of crazy stuff happened during that time. But basically we like made our way up the West Coast, and we stayed in California for a while, and then we stayed in the Pacific Northwest, and he had some ties to Portland, so we lived in Portland for a while.
Wow.
And got to experience all of that, and just worked, and we did just random odd jobs. And at the time I was already sort of putting together what would eventually become Silverbox. And
okay. Wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of just we were just flying by the seat of our pants and just finding random places, or just looking up places on our phones as we were arriving to them, and being what is happening?
True nomadic life.
Yeah, exactly. And some really crazy experiences happened along that trip, and then we made our way we cut across and basically went from the East Coast or the West Coast to the East Coast. And he had family in New York, and so we drove across the country very slowly, and just made our way through all of these little random towns and cities, and eventually made our way to New York, where we lived for a little while. And that was something that sort of growing up in New Mexico and having just a very Southwest, just upbringing and
totally different.
Yeah,
vibes
totally different, totally different. But my dad had ties to New York, and he had always done shows or tours, or my dad's a musician as well. I grew up sort of thinking New York was just this incredible, sparkly, exciting, amazing place. And I always wanted to live there. And I had been there multiple times throughout, my childhood with my dad. And my dad is such a rock star. And he would take me on these incredible adventures, and we'd go and hang out with Bono, and hang out with Paul McCartney, and hang out with my dad was always in that scene. And so I had this idea of New York that I would go there and just have all these connections and do all these things, and it'd be easy, kind of.
Yeah, I can see how you might form that opinion based on what you knew about it. That's all you can go off of. So you're truly, I wouldn't blame you. I feel the same way. Let's do it. It's gonna be awesome.
And fortunately, my partner at the time, he did have family there, so we were able to kind of fall back on that. But it was such a culture shock to be there, and amazing and beautiful. And I think in a lot of ways, my artistry and my creativity and just who I was becoming was really blooming there. And it was, just really such a mecca. It's just so much stimulation and so much going on. And right when I was starting to feel okay, this is this is kind of like where my life is going now. This is the trajectory, and this is like, I can really see myself living here for a while, or like experiencing this other type of life that's so far removed from like where I grew up. Really, like, there was a series of tragedies in my family right during that time. And basically my auntie Kale, who was my mom's older sister, she became very sick, and she was one of the most important people in my life. And there was just sort of this like really intense pull back to New Mexico for that reason, but for also this series of like really intense turning points and really intense like tragedies that happened in my life during that time. And it was like the more that I tried to sort of like cut the ties and just like live my own life and be away from my family and be away from New Mexico, the more I was pulled back. And I think a lot of people who grew up in New Mexico and who either have moved away and come back, or who never moved away and just have like lived here all their lives, there's this feeling, we like to say that it's like, so New Mexico is the land of enchantment, right? Yeah. But it's also the land of entrapment. And it's like you feel somehow your soul is contained in this place, and it's like no matter where you go, or if you move away, or if you have a whole other life that's separate from it, you never can quite like leave. And there's something that holds your soul here. Actually, this is kind of like a side note too, but I'm working on a couple of projects that really like highlight that idea. And I have a couple of really amazing collaborators who I'm working with right now. Awesome. Who are also like from here, so who just like really deeply understand this phenomenon. Yeah, so basically my aunt was really sick, and I had a short amount of, I knew like in my heart that I had a short amount of time with her, and so that I needed to come back. And I came back, and then everything just sort of spiraled, and a lot of crazy things happened in my family and in my personal life. And it was just, it became very apparent that there was a reason why I was called back here, and that I couldn't really leave again in a timely manner like how I wanted to. So wow. Yeah, I stayed, and I've been here since then. That was 2016.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about how you needed that experience, a way to start blooming. Mm-hmm. And entrapment is never a good connotation. I think there's a freeing kind of connection to a place, and there's a stifling kind of connection to a place. And even, I mean, when I was talking with y'all earlier, almost everybody that grew up where I live now feels the same way about Appalachia as you just said about New Mexico. And yet, now that because I told you I feel like a different, lighter person coming here, there's none of that weight behind it. Mm-hmm. So I get to just enjoy it as an excursion. But even living in Appalachia, I went there without any of the history. You know, my family's not from there. So to me, it's just like a playland. You know, I love living in the mountains. And I'm obviously smart enough to recognize how other people experience places. Yeah. But you had this epic journey that leads you home, and you're here to stay. And you wrote a really beautiful book of poetry that came from, I love when people, it's almost like you're just grabbing things from all these places you go. Mildred's book, you'll see it. It's like when people have been in all these other places, it doesn't matter how long necessarily you are in a place or what happens. It's like you're always going to have these memories, these experiences that you hold on to. And for you, you put these into a poetry book. But can you talk about the construct of the silver box and where that concept came from and how your poems fit into that? Because I hope more people read them, because I just love the fact that it was such a long time coming.
Yes.
You didn't write this in 6 months.
Right.
You didn't rush it. You took your time.
Yeah.
And that makes it even more special to know that. So can you talk about how you decided on that title and the concept, and then why it was time to put all those out into the world?
Yeah, so the concept of Silverbox came from one of my dear friends, Christopher Brooks, who is also a poet and just a beautiful human. But when I was sort of in a really dark place, in a really sad place, sort of right after all of these tragedies happened in my family, he was stationed in Afghanistan, and he sent me, just like out of the blue, he would send me these like incredible, unique trinkets and gifts. And somehow they held such emotion and such beauty, and they were like exactly what I needed at that given moment. And one of them was this like tiny little sterling silver box. It had etched on it like the outline of an eagle. And it was so tiny, and inside it was literally like grains of sand from Afghanistan, a tiny, tiny little dried yellow rose, and I think there was like a piece of granite or a piece of jasper or something in it. And it was just these tiny little like what is that? But it was so special to me, and it evoked such emotion and such like, it made me feel like anything and everything and all the beauty of the world could be held and encompassed by this like tiny trinket or relic. And I already had quite a few of the poems that I had written for the book that I sort of wanted to keep together for some reason.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how they would manifest or where they would go or where I would put them, but I knew that they belonged together for some reason. And so I always wanted to write a collection of poetry, and I sort of had this like ongoing list of either poems that I had that I wanted to curate with other pieces. And at the time, I kind of thought maybe I was making a lot of videos at that time and doing like voiceovers and
I've
stuff.
seen quite a few of those, yeah.
And so I sort of saw it as just like I would release a couple just random pieces on the internet and see what happened. I never really thought that I would write a book and have it published. That was sort of like crazy to me.
How cool.
Yeah. And it was really, I credit my friend Christopher with really helping me with that, as well as my really good friend and my mentor, Gary Moody, whose book I have here. Mm-hmm. So they were the ones who really encouraged me to like send it off to places, and that was just like a painstaking process, and I hated every minute.
It's so hard, isn't it? Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know that any author likes that.
Yeah, it was horrible, and I really I'm so stubborn, and I really didn't want to like change anything or like follow anybody else's guidelines. And so I would send it off, not ever thinking that anybody would care or want to read more of it or like want to publish it. And it kind of took my friend Christopher to like send it off for me, because after a while I was just like, I don't really want to do this anymore, and it's not going anywhere, and I don't want to like just be rejected more.
Yeah, it can get demoralizing.
So, yeah, and it didn't really mean so much to me that it was published. It was more that I had all of the pieces that I wanted to be included in this like project, and it was so much just like a labor of love and a soul project for me that I didn't care too much about it getting published. Just like in the way of like some magical happening and like spirit, I think this one like tiny little publishing house wanted my book as is and didn't like require me to change anything, or didn't want.
Because they knew.
Yeah, it was just like I was meant to wait that long.
Yeah.
I was meant to have all of these like rejections, and I was meant to like go through all of this stuff. And also in the long span that I was sending it off and like all of that stuff, I was also going through a lot of like personal changes, and during that time I wrote a lot of the pieces that eventually needed to be in the book.
Yeah.
And so it was like, before, even though I thought that I was ready and it was ready and the book was done and I wanted to send it off, it wasn't, and I needed to have some of these pieces included. And that's why it took this long, and that's why this one publisher like was meant to have it. And
so they saw a form of it that it evolved,
yes.
right? Because you then had these new things while you were waiting.
Yes.
So sometimes waiting is just a gift, as big of a gift as if it had been.
Yes.
Maybe even more so.
100% more so, I think.
I was interesting. Mildred and I were talking about this because her whole thing was you should send 2 pieces for every rejection you get. Like just keep going, because the point is, don't worry so much. It's out of your control.
Yes.
But she said whenever her book gets somewhere, it found a home. And so it sounds like yours had just been waiting to find that home. And if I'm not wrong, your publisher is from Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And I found that really interesting with your great-grandmother. It's
very, very like weirdly full circle. Yeah.
Your home got found all the way back there in this tiny publisher.
Yeah.
I think that's really special.
Yeah.
So how did it feel when you finally got, it's a stressful process, but you get it as is, you get the book out into the world. Sometimes people then start saying like, oh, I just need to do more.
Yeah.
I just need to like follow up on that. What was your reaction to getting your poems out in the world? I know you did some readings out here and you performed too with your husband. Like, that's really cool. But did you feel a sense of contentment, or were you also kind of like relieved? What were the emotions of having a poetry book, especially when you didn't anticipate ever having that?
Well, I did not feel like I needed to do more. It was very much like, wow, like it was just like this kind of weight lifted off of my shoulders. And actually I read the acceptance letter on the day Kyle and I got married, right before, it was like right as I was getting ready, right before I was like about to walk down the aisle.
Amazing.
And just for some reason, I was like, I'm going to check my email.
Of all the times to do it.
And I just remember I was like sitting in the bathroom in my veil and my wedding dress. And I just like read this acceptance letter that they were like going to publish my book as is.
Yeah.
And I just remember like I couldn't contain this like excitement, but also this like feeling that of any other day, like, why today? Why is this happening today? And I think a lot of things in my life have happened that way. And that's why I so much trust. I just like trust in this, like, this higher power, and that things are meant to be. And that if I just like let it be and just trust that everything will happen and unfold the way it's meant to, that it will. And I still can't even believe that people have my book and they read my book and they know my poems. And that blows my mind. And when I did my book launch, my initial book launch at Collected Works in Santa Fe, I was really expecting, I think I may have told you this on the phone, but I was very much expecting like my like core friends to be there, my family. And then like I didn't really promote it that much. Like I would, say like I have a book launch, on my Instagram or something. But I was thoroughly surprised by how many people showed up to my book launch. Like it makes me so emotional to think about that and to like relive that moment. That was one of the most important moments of my life. And I just remember like I was in the little green room, they call it, and I'm definitely not a shy person. Like, I can get up there and perform. Like, I do a lot of performing, I guess. And I'm used to being on stage or in front of people and doing that thing. So but I had this like really intense like feeling of like shyness, and the book is so incredibly personal to me that I didn't know how I would feel to like open up in that way. And it's one thing for people to like have my book and read it, and it's another thing to express it in person to other people. So I just remember sitting in that green room, and I was like, I sort of saw like a couple of people trickle in, and I was like, oh wow, this is happening. Oh my gosh. I was 8 months pregnant at the time.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
And then I started hearing this kind of like hum, this like low hum of people, and it started to feel like, again, that like heaven sent feeling, that feeling of like there's something else, there's like a higher power that's guiding me. And I literally like, so my mom, she introduced me during that time. Of course. And it was so, she's the only person who I wanted to introduce me.
Yeah.
And I heard her voice, and she like had this beautiful little speech that she wrote about me and about my book and about the journey that it took to get there. And then I walked out, and literally there were people out the doors. And I just burst into tears, and just like seeing all of the people there for me and for my book, and people who had like believed in me and wanted to be there for this reason, and like read my poetry and knew my poetry. And like this like silly little book just like reached so many people. And that was also one of the first times that I ever felt, throughout my pregnancy, I didn't feel like the movement as much as I did during that time. Wow. I remember I stepped on stage, and I was like fumbling around, and then I just remember like Cinema in my belly was just like flipping, and that was the first time I had ever felt her in that way. That's giving me chills,
That's amazing.
So that was like such an important part of my life. And then the other thing that happened that was really important and poignant during that time was my grandpa. At the time, his health was ailing, and that was the reason that he couldn't come to our wedding, and he wasn't able to like be super out and about anymore at that point. But then I remember like right around like when I was introducing the book and reading the foreword from like his foreword and reading some of his words, I just saw him like wheel in. And just the fact that he was able to see that, and he was able to like see that I had done, like followed through and done the thing that was like so important to me, and that he was proud of me, just meant the world to me, So that was one of the most important moments in my life, and I'll always remember it. Yeah.
Like I keep thinking of that moment. Like, obviously, how could you not be overcome with emotion?
Yeah.
I mean, whew. I would have lost it too.
Yeah.
And reading the foreword, I mean, like
yeah.
He's a part of it all.
Yeah.
And that is so beautiful and so special. And to have that memory.
Yeah.
Forever. Like,
it's such an incredible memory, and just like the reception that my book has gotten is just like beyond my wildest dreams. And even to like be here with you, and just the fact that it like reached you.
Well, and if I can help it, it's going to reach a lot more people.
Yeah.
I always hope that someday when I meet people like you, that even though you're far away, like as long as I'm at City Lights, you got a spot to read that book.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Even though it might be harder and to do it performatively rather than just have strangers in North Carolina read it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's something to be proud of.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very proud of it.
And I think one of the things with this project that I don't want to diminish is just how difficult it is to put yourself out there. And for all the people that do it, it helps me continue.
Yeah.
Because also I really am drawn to people like you that did it not for the reception, but because it meant that much to you. And then to have that reception just says like, wow, how great it is to do something that's honest and true and that you really, really wanted to follow through on. And then for everybody to come out and support like that. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh, how can you not remember that forever? And it also says something about, so there's a Mary Oliver quote I really love that I think you've embodied in some way with this poetry book and probably many other things in your life. But it's, there are moments in life that call out to be fulfilled. Like telling someone you love them or giving your money away, all of it. And the last line is, why be cautious when headlong can save a life, even possibly your own? And it's just, that. I'm paraphrasing, but I've always lived that way where it's like, if you put something out there, like who might respond? Who might need it or who might just really appreciate it? And so, you're like now in front of all these people, your mom's introducing you, your grandfather comes in and it's like, that was a moment. Yeah. Meant to be fulfilled. Yes. And I'm so glad you got that. It's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Me too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You have a really beautiful and powerful life. And I'm so glad that we've been able to recount some of that. And I thank you for sharing because it's not always easy to put all that into words.
Yeah. I'm not that good with talking sometimes.
Yeah. Poets often aren't. Yeah. They're the quiet ones. They're the ones that I have to somehow pry information out of. But it's weird. I interview so many poets.
You're a great interviewer, by the way. Like you're the way that you like formulate your questions and you just like go with it and go with the flow. Like that's impressive. And I praise you for that.
Well, thank you.
You make it easier to.
Well, I think you all make it easy to do it too, because it's just like, once you're like really into it, you just you do go with it. Yeah. Because to me, it's just like you're a new friend. Yeah. Think if you're just meeting a new friend, what would you talk about, I think that's a good point, though, to transition, because I'm looking at some of these books, and I know they're going to relate to a lot of what we talked about, including that Patti Smith one. So let's start with the first book on the bed.
Okay. I guess I'll start with The Ancient Child.
Sweet.
The Ancient Child is one of the most important works to me. Again, it was one that I sort of came to on my own. Like I had always seen this book like on a bookshelf or in my grandpa's house or on the desk or in my mom's, on her desk or whatever. But it's sort of like, I guess it's kind of like a lesser known book of my grandpa's. And one of the reasons that I love it so much, and one of the main reasons why I love it so much, is there's a lot about Billy the Kid.
Yes, I'm so glad we get to talk about this. That was one of the videos I watched of yours. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, so Billy is such an important figure in my life, in my family, in our history. Very, very close to my heart. And he's such a prominent focus in the lyricism of my life and of my family. And in thinking about our history, he's always there somewhere. It's like very hard to explain. Yeah. And I've had to in a lot of instances because people are like, why Billy the Kid? Or like, what is this about? Or like, what the heck?
I mean, it is, yeah. I love the line, Billy Kid was my boyfriend.
Yeah, so like I've had to explain it a lot of times and I never know how to because it's like, it's one of those things that just exist, but it can't really be explained in a good way.
Sometimes you leave it at that,
Yeah, but anyway, I love Billy. He is my boyfriend. He's been my lover. He's been like part of my family. He's been this figure that is like arrested in this way and like in the landscape and in the myth and in the words. And he just always is. And so it takes me back to kind of like the roots of spirituality and the roots of like what we believe, especially in Native culture and in my culture and in my roots. Just that there's certain things that just never leave, and they are with you always. And for some reason, Billy is one of those entities. And my grandpa wrote a lot about him. I think it was him who really invented this idea that like we knew Billy the Kid, or like we spent time with Billy the Kid. And when I was really young, I just accepted that that was true. Like I didn't really understand that that could be like something that wasn't like actually true, or like actually
not an actual factual
not
here,
an
but
actual
to the kid it's
fact. Yeah, or like I didn't really understand that like no, Billy, lived during this time and we lived during this other time, and there's no way that we could have crossed paths. That just never entered my mind. I was like, of course Billy is just like part of our family.
Wow. What an interesting
Yeah.
figure to have it as a part of your family, I hadn't heard that before, so I was just so enamored with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's true, because this is not a well-known text to put in front of people.
Yeah.
And certainly not in other parts of the country.
Yeah. And so going back to that, one of the really important pieces in my book is a poem called Anything for Billy. And I wrote that in my English class when I was 15. And I just knew that like somehow, somewhere, this piece needs to like live on and tell the story of something that's like really prominent in my life. And like around that time, I like got this like tattoo of Billy.
I noticed that.
And
I was wondering.
that was like something that was like my first tattoo that I gave myself. And yeah, it was just like he's always been with me. I've written many poems about Billy and about these like different stages in our lives, and to me he's like completely fluid, and like time doesn't exist with him. And so there's been a lot of like different chapters, I suppose, but a lot of it stems from this text and like how he is perceived by my grandpa, and this sort of like love story between him and Gray, and like this embodiment of the American West and like outlaws and cowboys and Indians. And it's just so much like tells the story about where I grew up and where I come from, and like it's so much is me.
How wonderful to see that in the story.
Yeah.
And to come to it in your own time, as you said, like not trying to like read too much into it, but now it's like something. I'm not surprised you would put this in. Like if I traveled here and put it on the bed, because of course.
Yeah, of course. And we have to honor Billy in some way. Yeah, there's just so many important pieces in this particular book. I believe is my mom's.
Oh, cool.
So I have like a few editions of this book.
Yeah, I see the faint pencil or pen
this
there.
one was this one has like always been with me, and this has always been in my family home. It's like all beat up, and there's.
This is why I tell people to bring the books though, because then there's the story of the physical copy itself. And
there's like the faint pencil. I really can't even make it out, but it looks like the last thing it says is Christmas 1989.
Wow.
And I just love the way it feels. I love the way it smells.
Yeah, it looks worn in the best possible way.
I've gone through this book so many times, and even just like flipping through, there's this one page that is the most important page, and
you gonna read it?
I may.
Please.
Yeah. I think it's actually in my other book that I have it all like dog-eared.
Do you want to go
But
get
anyway,
it?
It's
Is it here?
maybe.
Yeah, we can take the time to get it.
Okay. I think it's this one, though. This one might have belonged to Bruce. Again, I have so many, like... There's so many editions of this one book. But yeah, see, it's all like...
Oh, yeah, you got all the marks.
all the marks. And I don't even know if this is the right one either.
Look at those bent pages, too.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but
Maybe.
I can recite it to you though.
Yeah, do it.
It's Gray's monologue. And I've recited this many times, though I don't know if I can remember all of it right now.
That's okay.
But it goes, "Ah, damn it to hell anyway, Billy. Geez, you had a drop on that son of a bitch. Why didn't you just blast him? Zap. Blow the fucker away, huh? Hey, Billy, remember that time? That really boss time we had at Lincoln, remember? You was up there in that courthouse with old Bob and old Bell, and I come to see you, remember? It said how much I'd admire shaking hands with an honest-to-God outlaw and all. And old Bell, he said, well, he reckoned it'd be all right. And old Bob, he fussed and he fumed, and he liked to have a big old fit. And then there's some other pieces, and then it goes, and you rattled your handcuffs for me like castanets, just flashing that shit-eating grin of yours, that cool shit-eating buck-tooth grin. And I slipped you that note. Oh, that old unsurpassed in glory, never to be forgotten cigarette paper outhouse note, remember? I think that's all I can
Oh my gosh, I've never had anybody be able to recite by heart. So that's amazing. Got in character too and everything.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm so glad you brought that out.
Yeah, it's a special one. And I think there has always been a very innate romanticization about the Wild West and outlaws and cowboys and Indians and New Mexico and the Southwest. And I think in a lot of ways in our generation now, there's kind of like a revival of that. And I think this is just like such an important book. And I've gotten quite a few of my friends who are my age to read this book because I just like think it's so amazing and so important. And it's funny because I hear stories about when my grandfather initially wrote this book and put it out. There was a lot of backlash, especially from his mother. She did not like this book because of the foul language, the sex scenes, the vulgarity of it. And it's just so funny that like it just has, again, there's like so many full circle moments, and I can just like picture her being like so angry that he put that out there, and now just like that it's so important to me. And also that one monologue that I just recited for you has been recited by my mom so many times. My mom's an actress, and so she did that so many times, and then like I did it so many times. I believe my sister's done it, and my mom's sisters, and so it just became like such an embodiment of our family in a lot of ways.
I'm so glad I got it. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's talk about the second one.
Okay. I'm going to actually do this one. So this is Jimmy Santiago Baca, and he is one of my favorite poets. And this one is called Martin and Meditations on the South Valley. This book was given to me by one of my best friends, Taz. First of all, I love the cover.
It is cool.
I think it's so striking.
Yeah.
And it just brings this feeling of like, in New Mexico, we call it gente. And it's just very much like family and roots and like knowing where you're from. Again, that like enchantment, entrapment, duality. Jimmy is from New Mexico. So I have just this like deep connection with his writing and his work. Yeah, are you familiar with Jimmy?
No.
Yeah, he's incredible. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times, and he's just this super like down to earth dude. And he's done a lot of work with the prisons, and he actually learned to write poetry in prison.
Wow.
Yeah, he did a lot of time when he was younger. And
does he write poems about the experience in prison in this book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's really interesting. There's been a thread of that across the country that I've learned of incarcerated poets or poets that have become poets while they're in prison. The most significant one to me is Etheridge Knight, who is from Mississippi but was in Indiana in prison. And oh my gosh, that man destroyed me when I first read his poems, because I was like, we grow up with all these ideas of who goes to prison.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Yeah.
And to have someone write this special book, write about the experience, but to have a poet come out of that.
Totally.
Wow. So yeah, anyway, it's just interesting that I've learned of way more poets that have been in prison and that have really inspired people than I ever knew existed.
Yeah.
So here's another one.
Yeah. This particular book is just so transformative and so honest, and in so many ways like so brutal. And I love how he brings to light all of these like really intense, dark things that happen in New Mexico. And in New Mexico, like there really is like a very complicated and dark history here, and there's so much duality, and even just in my family and in my history and in the history of New Mexico and Santa Fe, and like people who have come here and stayed, and then there's the whole like the Spanish against the native people, and like how most of us are like very mixed. And then there's like this identity crisis, and
there was a collision of cultures here.
So much.
Similar to like New Orleans. I mean, there's certain places that it's happened much more intensely.
Yeah.
And they've been in conflict where there is that like, who are we?
Yeah.
You know, and then when you read about it, but I think it's important. I'm glad you're sharing this because it's a good point.
Yeah.
Me growing up in Ohio, you tend to, we use the word monolith.
Yeah.
But we simplify cultures.
Yes.
And then when you actually come to a place, you're like, wait, I didn't know how many cultures are a part of this one culture we like to talk about. I remember reading this book by a professor at the University of Oklahoma that was about Taos and Santa Fe becoming artist colonies. And he talks about how both Arizona and New Mexico were difficult sells to Congress to get as states in the Union. And the term that was used was that this place, generally the Southwest before statehood, was a scorned and desperate land.
Wow.
That it was brutal, it was ugly, nothing good could come of making these states. So it's like there's that perception, and then there's the opposite end, which is it's so enchanting and beautiful that there's nothing real that happens here, right? It's just a dream, coming to New Mexico. So it's like being able to accept both of those, the scorned and desperate nature of this place that can be really rugged and brutal, and the enchanting, almost like transcendental beauty of the place, which is encapsulated by the light. The light out here is different than everywhere else in the country. The sky out here is different, but it doesn't mean there isn't that brutal struggle and then all of these complications of what's happened with the history. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I just hope that more people understand that this place isn't kind of like a one-track history. It's all over the place. Yeah. And it's all things just like everywhere else. And that should be reflected in its writing. And I think the best of you do that. So anyway, I thought I'd bring that up because I always thought that was so interesting. The scorned and desperate land. What a line.
What a line. It's true.
So that's cool that you brought this book and that you have a personal connection to it as well.
Yeah, I just think this book is so beautiful, and I love that a lot of it is in Spanish.
You like to write in Spanish.
Yeah, I like to write in Spanish, and again, that's like this funny, weird thing because like I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and it's so much a part of like New Mexican culture, and there's so many dialects of Spanish, and a lot of Spanish speakers speak in broken Spanish or Spanglish, or like, just like a lot of our words are either Spanish or indigenous, and they're kind of, it's like this confluence and this like mix of all of these different cultures, and yet there's still so much like warring between the cultures. And there's this whole thing actually that's happening right now in Santa Fe is the fiestas, and it's like celebrating essentially the conquest of this area. And
Woof.
there's so much heaviness, and the entrada and the conquistadors and like all of the people and the natives. And because we're all so mixed here, it's hard to be like, oh, well, I'm like a pure blooded whatever, and like in my family, there's so many different cultures, just like we all have down the line in our familial history. And there's like, my grandfather talks a lot about the Mexican captives in my family, or like down the line. And yeah, I think this book just really speaks to like all of that, and also again bringing to light all of these crazy things that happen in New Mexico. And in New Mexico, there's a lot of drug problems and addiction problems, and I know that's everywhere, but it just speaks to a lot of things that are like so deeply rooted in our culture. His way of writing just like makes everything beautiful.
Is there any particular poem that reflects what you're talking about that you'd want to read? Or
yeah, let me find one.
Not to make you keep performing.
yeah. He talks a lot about Santa Fe because he spent time in Santa Fe, but he also, this is about the South Valley, which is like in Albuquerque area, and there's a whole like other crazy history in Albuquerque. And I also love how he talks about like certain things like the cattle ranches and like people's grandparents, and he just has such amazing imagery, and like like seeing this like old Apache man's hands, and like studying his wrinkles. And he talks a lot about like agriculture and car culture. Like those are all things that are like really important to me and really important in my family, and I draw inspiration from all of those things. So to have somebody just like embody all of those things and really again just understand like this place, this incredible crazy like dream of a place that embodies all of these things.
It seems like so many people search for that and where they're from.
Yes.
I mean, it's
yes.
just
So anyway, I'm gonna read this. It's a little bit long, but I'll just read part of it.
Cool.
And a lot of these are unnamed poems. They're just like numbered.
I love that.
Years pass, cattle cars in the downtown freight yard squeal and groan, and sizzling grills steam the Barelas Coffee House cafe windows as the railroad workers with tin hard hats stop for coffee. Hours of dawn softly click on grandfather's gold pocket watches in Louie's Broadway pawn shop, hawked to get a cousin of a brother out of jail. City workers' tin carts and long-handled dustpans clatter in curb gutters as buses spew smoldering exhaust as they stop beneath Walgreens' neon liquor sign. I lean against an office building brick wall, nothing to do, nowhere to go, comb my hair in the blue-tinted office windows, see my reflection in the glinting chromed cars. On a corner, beneath a smoking red traffic light, I live, blue beanie cap snug over my ears, down to my brow, in wide-bottomed jean pants trimmed with red braid. I start my daily walk to the Old Town Post Office, condemned Armijo school buildings, Rio Grande Playa. ditches and unsurpasses, detribalized Apache, entangled in the rusty barbed wire of a society I do not understand, Mexicano blood in me spattering like runoff water from a roof canal, glistening over the lives who lived before me like rain over mounds of broken pottery, each day backfills with brown dirt of my dreams.
You ain't lying. Wow. Right? That is a great poem to pick, too, to embody exactly what you're talking about. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Exactly.
Dang, thanks for putting me onto this.
Yeah, he's incredible. And like all of his poems just like punch you in the gut like that.
Yeah, what an intensity.
Yeah.
And I love, like, even you reading it, you can tell you're like getting into it. Yeah, that's great. Oh, man. Whew, that's a great second one.
Yeah.
What about the third? What we got next?
Okay, I'm going to do this one. This is a small little cookbook called Historic Cookery, Authentic New Mexican Food.
Love it. Love it.
By Fabiola Cabeza de Baca Gilbert. This book was given to me by another friend, and I've had multiple editions of this book or multiple like pieces of this book before. It's really important to me because first of all, like my other passion is cooking. And I think it's such like, you know, cooking as an energy transfer and as a gift to the people you love. Yeah. And it was really important for me to sort of like learn and or relearn a lot of like authentic recipes from where I live.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really sweet. It's really small, and
it's a beautiful book.
It's a beautiful book.
Like, oh my gosh, the artwork is great.
I always have this. I love cookbooks, and I have a bazillion of them. But this one I always like return to, and more than finding recipes to cook, I like to read them and then create poems.
Of course. You can't not as a poet. Man, that's, it's so interesting. Oh my God, the connection between you and Mildred, not with recipes, but she brought a tarot book that she writes poems based off the images. So she doesn't read any of it.
Okay.
And so it's interesting what sparks poetry in people to write, because it could be so many things. But I love that you have food as a line to your poetry as well, because they go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand for me, for sure. And I think like the sensory experience of cooking and then eating and like just watching people eat, and like I can talk about food all day long. And it was hard for me to like pick a cookbook because I didn't want just like 6 cookbooks.
I'm sure. Maybe we need to just do a cookbook, all cookbook season.
Yeah.
Everybody picks 6 cookbooks from different cultures. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by food and cooking, and I love reading, especially like vintage cookbooks or cookbooks that have like had multiple editions and like things added to it. And I love this one because it's so familially based, and there's like these are all like family recipes, and I just picture like the little grandma in her kitchen and she like made all of these recipes, and some of them are so simple and beautiful, and it's like 4 ingredients, and I just think it's really special to be able to just like make something like so hearty and so delicious and so nourishing from just like a couple of things that you happen to have in your garden, back in the day.
Yeah.
So I love writing about food. I love reading about food. I love to eat.
And you've talked about, even today, right? That's one of your gifts you want to share with people.
Yeah,
it is. To feed them. You had 12 people here and fed them all day.
Yes.
You have to love it.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
It's one of those things that's like, it's a ton of work, but for me, it's so fulfilling, and it's like a labor of love for sure.
Well, see, I'm lucky. I've gotten your poetry. I'm eating your food. Like, I'm getting all the good stuff today.
And just like some of these recipes and some of the words are just like morcilla. That's one of the words that I use in some of my poems, or I have used in some of my poems, and it's blood pudding. Just some of these things see, like now looking back or reading through these, they seem so like old world and so like archaic and like, but this is just like what we ate, what our grandmas ate. And
I love it. Keeping it alive.
yeah, I take inspiration from this pretty often. I reach for this.
I'll have to steal some recipes for my brother's vegan. So if there's any good recipes in there that he could cook, I should
Yeah,
maybe tell him.
yeah, definitely. Lots
Oh.
of like beans and rice.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that's wonderful.
that's one
I'm
of the
glad you chose
books.
it. It makes a lot of sense to have the cookbook in there.
Yeah.
Oh. So what about
Thank
number
you.
4?
Okay. This is Hazards of Grace by Gary Worth Moody.
Sweet.
And Gary is my mentor and one of my dearest, dearest friends. He's one of those poets who just really like transport you. And I think partly because like I know what an incredible person he is, and his heart is so big, and he's just so important to me in so many ways. But even without all of that, like his poems, he's one of my favorite poets. Like if anybody asked me who my favorite poet was, I'd probably say him.
Sweet. What does he write about in this that you love?
It's like his work is about the human condition, and there's so many like beautiful, just so many beautiful lines that really speak to me, and it's so honest and so like consolidated, and I think it just like really speaks to beauty and pain and pleasure and like simplicity in a lot of ways. Like the titles of his poems are really interesting and cool. This one is Elegy for the Ugliest Man in the World. There's Rain, comma, and on the skin red blossoms burn. Just like really punchy, honest, beautiful pieces. And I love that his work is so like unpolished is a good word. Like it's just as if, you know, you're like reading someone's stream of consciousness. And
I like that too.
I think like part of the beauty of this book is that it all goes together, but also like each poem really exists on its own. Yeah, he's just like one of the most important people to me.
What if
So I
you
love
could
him.
say a couple things that he's given you as a mentor? What do you think you learned the most from him?
You know, besides my family, he was the first person who just like really believed in my poetry. I met him when I was a child, basically. Like I was maybe 14, 15 when I met him. And he really just, he didn't treat me like I was a kid, and he saw my work for what I wanted to be seen as and what I was trying to transpose. And I think the biggest piece of inspiration and like lesson that he's given me is to be unafraid and to just go for it and to do it. And he really like stood behind me through so much in my life. And I think it was kind of like he didn't really know how important he was to me.
Aren't those the best people?
Yeah.
Because they're doing it just because it's...
Yeah, and
They're
he's
doing it,
just
they're not
like,
thinking about
he's
what-
so genuine, and
We all need that.
yeah, he's just like one of the best people in the world.
That's so special.
Gary, and he's an incredible writer. Just the way he sees the world is so inspiring and beautiful, and I think everybody should read his books. He has 3 books, and he sort of like helped me in the like journey of like publication and like helping me submit to like journals, or he would like recommend me for different things, different readings, and
Yeah.
he sort of like helped me get in touch with a lot of other writers who eventually would become like really important people in my life. And I definitely credit him for all of that and so much more, and I just love him.
That's what's so cool to see the special connections to the writers.
Yeah.
Because there's always something so much deeper behind these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes even unexplainable. But to be able to also know you better through this book because of what he's done for you and what he's meant to you. Writers who are connectors, who want more people writing and don't see it as a competition, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
Because some people, they can get protective over it. Like writers are for a certain class of people.
Right.
And they don't want to help people out.
Yeah.
So to have someone that's selfless like that.
Yeah. He's like the opposite of that.
Yeah. It makes the writing community, they want more people to be a part of it. Because that can only mean it gets more rich with everybody's words. So to have him help you along in that to become who you are, that's awesome.
I believe this was his first book.
And I love reading firsts by people. Like there's just nothing better than to see the origins of an artist.
Totally. Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing that. And I love that backstory.
Yes.
I'm really glad that that's part of this collection. Yeah. What do we got for number 5?
So the next book will be Earthkeeper.
Yes.
And I just thought, like, how could I not have this in my list?
Yeah.
And,
necessary.
It is. It really is. And yeah, so this is Earthkeeper, Reflections on the American Land by Natachee Momaday. And this was one of his later books. To me, this book kind of functions as, well, to my family, really, this book kind of functions as like a Bible. There's so much, and it's so small and compact. And I think, like, towards the end of my grandpa's life, he really spoke more to something that was like so much larger than us. And he had such a beautiful way of talking about our earth and about this ancient land that is sort of being abused, but also the beauty of it and animals and the earth and the sky. And so I love to just open to a page and be able to affirm something, you know. To me, I think this was one of his most important works, and I think he felt the same way.
I'm not going to lie. When I first read that, I was like, yo.
Yeah.
It's interesting you use the word Bible.
Yeah.
Because think of how many people refer back to certain passages. In the same way that you're talking about this book to affirm something or help them stay on a path or comfort them. And when I read it, that's the first thing I thought is like, man, there are passages from this book that I'm going to go back to forever.
Definitely.
Because, it's so interesting. It doesn't mean, long form stuff is great. And he's really good at that too. But to have this tiny little book pack so much power is really cool. Because, it's so easy to just say like, okay, I'm going to go here today. And there's going to be something on every page of that book.
Definitely.
That is important to read. I love it.
I love that there are so many just like very small passages too. Like each page is a short little anecdote or has a short little anecdote, but it's so magnificent and so important.
Do you have any page particularly that is most special to you or that you go back to a lot?
Yeah. There's this one that sort of in some ways acted as like an elegy. And it's, may my heart hold the earth all of the days of my life. And when I am gone to the farther camps, may my name sound on the green hills. And may the cedar smoke that I have breathed drift on the canyon walls and among the branches of living trees. May birds of many colors encircle the soil where my steps have been placed, and may the deer, the lion, and the bear of the mountains be touched by the blessings that have touched me. May I chant the praises of the wild land, and may my spirit range on the wind forever. That just is my grandpa. I think that's one of the most important pieces that he ever wrote. I feel him in this land, and I hear him on the wind and in the river and in the animals. So that's one of them. And another one of them function as my
I was going to say, I wonder if you brought that to bust it out.
I did.
I know this is really important to you.
Yeah, and that one is, there are those who believe that the earth is dead, They are deceived. The earth is alive, and it is possessed of spirit. Consider the holy tree. It can be allowed to thirst. It can be cut down. Worst of all, it can be denied our faith in it, our belief. But if we speak to it, if we pray, it will thrive. Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes the smallest things that sum up a whole person's heart and
Very
spirit.
much so. Very much so.
And I like, truly, what's great about this too is I gave that as a gift to Mildred, and I didn't know what you were going to pick. So I love sometimes when those things just end up connecting. That book's just been really on my mind a lot. And
I think for a lot of people, it's just like, it's exactly what needed to be released when it was, and it's sort of like timeless and
that's what it is. Yeah. And it's timeless in the sense that it'll last forever, but it also can be read at any time and mean something.
Totally.
And I've been thinking a lot where I live of just how much threat is posed to our land. I mean, Appalachia is being ravaged and torn apart and broken down with abandon. And if we don't believe in it greater than ourselves, then the land's going to be destroyed irreparably. And so there's a lot of really, really beautiful people and strong people that are willing to fight for it. But I think like every day we need to have that consciousness of, if we don't protect it, someone will kill it.
Definitely.
That's just the way it is. And so in many ways, I don't want to read like a negative perspective on it. I want something that helps me continuously believe in it.
Yeah. And I think that's what this is. It's like, it's so uplifting and yeah.
And I know I've talked about that, I'm wearing this shirt, and I kind of accidentally did it. But the Earth Keeper. So Rebecca Jim, who is the Cherokee activist, well, really just Cherokee citizen, who's been fighting to clean up Tar Creek for decades now, which has been poisoned by the mining that went on in Pitcher, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I feel like this book is like speaking about her too as a water keeper. And just, I am so amazed at how she hasn't quit. And she's one of those positive influences that makes me say, she can go and endure all of these people, the loneliness too, that people aren't going to help. And she just keeps doing it. And so I think that, I continuously want to praise people who are showing us the way. And through whatever medium they do it. And I think this book is a great thing for people to have.
Yeah, I think so too. And just how accessible it is, and how even just like physically, how like, you can literally like keep this in your pocket or keep it in your purse or whatever, keep it in your car.
I think for some people it's been intentional, the weight and the size of books they've shared with me. Yeah. Thinking of like, oh, I'm a traveler, I'm staying at your house. You would want something that isn't going to take up a lot of space. But that's become an interesting theme. Is that people have said, okay, well, maybe I could share this book by this author, but this one's so small. Yeah. And yet it has the same powerful effect. Yeah. So why not have something that you can keep?
Yeah.
That could fit in my glove box.
Totally.
And you could just whip it out when, roadside somewhere in rural New Mexico and just enjoy it. So, I love that.
Yeah. So that's a special one.
So what about the 6th?
Yeah, I'm going to do this one.
Okay.
I want to do this one just because it's so huge and like crazy.
I was staring at it like, what is that?
But like, honestly, I've never really read it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But it has like a cool story.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can just at the end touch on it.
I'll touch on that. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Look at. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what do we have in front of us?
But this one is more like I actually reach for it and I actually look at it all the time. This is A Book of Days by Patti Smith. And this one's important to me because it's just like such a source of inspiration. And I look at this all the time. I've flipped through it hundreds of times. I like to use this as sort of like prompts. I sometimes do like writing groups or like sharing with friends, and that's really unlocked a lot of pretty juicy content for me. And so this serves as just like, I'll flip to a page and look at one of these like incredible images and read the captions and then just go from there. And I think there should be, I haven't really come across a ton of books like this that especially aren't like a coffee table book, that's just so dense with photographs and pictures and information, but like super accessible, and it can really just be like used for so many sources of inspiration.
For people that don't understand the structure of the book, can you explain the image and the text together on each page and what the general flow of the book is?
So each page has a large image on it, accompanied by a very small, short caption. It goes by month. And it's funny, too, because you can tell it's just, like, so personal to her. But to anybody else, it's kind of just, like, very random.
Yeah.
Like, each page has a picture and a caption. Like, I just flipped to the February section, February 1st, and it says, Jessie with roses in the snow. And it's a photograph of somebody named Jessie, and you can't really see her face, but you can tell it's just, like, somebody who's important to Patty, and it's, like, a striking image of this woman in a blurry snowstorm holding a dozen roses. And so I like to imagine the backstory, and I like to write based on these photographs. A lot of them are really striking. Like, I just flipped to another one of a young girl who lived through the bombings and starvation in war-torn Japan. And yeah, there's a lot of like celebrities and rock stars, but there's also just like random
there's just
photograph. Like, there's,
it's cool though.
Yeah, it's cool
because it is random. I think it's cool because it's random.
Yeah,
I see that journal entry too, or I forget what the one on like the graph paper is, but
yeah,
it's a good book for prompts.
it is. It's a really good book for prompts, and again, this is sort of like very like widely accessible, and a lot of my other books are like not, but it's just honest. I'm just being honest that this is one of the ones that I reach for most often.
Yeah. And it's again another great thing where if you share it with someone, they might do the same.
Yeah.
And those books that are constants in people's lives tend to, because again, you don't have to sit down and read for a few weeks.
Yeah.
You can just go to a page.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to strike you with the photograph or, the caption combined. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And Patti Smith, like you can't have your time in New York without some New York influences out there. It's interesting. Another poet I interviewed in North Carolina pretty much credits a random encounter before Patti Smith became Patti Smith. Mm-hmm. So he met Patti and was like, this normal person has this beautiful energy and this poetry. Like, maybe I should try that. Mm. So she completely changed the course of his life and didn't even know it. Because he was like driving a taxi at the time. His dad was really good friends with JFK.
Okay.
And then his dad actually killed himself 10 days after JFK was killed. And so there's this whole backstory. But yeah, Patti Smith was the one that finally helped him write. Yeah. And eventually in his 60s, he came out with his first poetry book. Wow. Which dealt with all that history. So anyway, it's pretty cool to have another person share Patti.
Yeah, no, she is amazing.
That's cool. Okay, so we got to 6. Do you want to say anything about these others that we have on the table?
I do, yeah. Just quickly. This one book, it's huge.
Yeah, at this point we have to address it.
And we have to address it. It's a Charles Dickens book, and it's like, I don't even really know what's in here. It says, American Notes, Pictures from Italy, Reprinted Pieces. And basically, when I was living in New York, I found this in a library in Ithaca. I was just so drawn to it just because of how it looks. It's this like beautiful old leather-bound book with like sparkly.
Yeah, it's glimmering in the sun.
Yeah, it's just like so gorgeous. It's obviously very old, and it was just something that like needed to come back with me, and so I pretty much, well, I did steal it.
I love that so much.
Yeah, I stole it.
Oh my gosh. And here it is all these years later.
Yeah, like look at this. Like
it's really cool.
It's just incredible. And
look at the detail. Like you don't find this in many books.
No. It says it's the memorial edition, and there's a little 17 written in red pen. So it just felt like it was like very important to somebody, and you know those books that are sort of like displaced in some like random place, and like, but maybe it meant something really important to somebody, you know. And it just felt like that. So
yeah, even the idea that it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real.
Like,
it had to have been.
Yes.
Look at this thing.
And there's like really cool illustrations, and just like the smell of it and is so old, and
it is an impressive book.
Yeah. So it just needed a new home, and I gave it a new home.
Yeah, I guess mine now.
And, yeah. I've carried this around now for like 11, 12 years.
Man, yeah, you could make up whose it was and where it was before that library. You could go all sorts of directions with that.
Yeah, I've never actually read any of the pages in this.
I gotta say though, some books are like, they do make you feel better that you have them.
Yeah.
Or they look cool on a shelf. Yeah. Or they give life to a room.
Yeah.
Or just the way that you thought about this book and why you took it.
Yeah.
That's important to have. So even if you haven't read it. I have some of those in my house, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It functions as like a work of art on its own, like without even opening it. Something that's really important to me, one of my prized possessions, is my vanity, and it's really old and it's red, and I have all of my like beautiful old trinkets that live on there, and this is one of the things that live on my vanity. And
I love that.
Yeah. So
I'm so glad you actually addressed that.
Yeah.
Now that I know the story.
Yeah. It's just a cool book.
It's thick too.
The other one, I'm not going to talk about that because that's just something else. But this other thing is also, I just have to address it. This is another one of my like prized possessions, and it was made just for me, and by one of my like longtime old family friends, Mick Lindbergh, who lives in England. And it's a pair of books that's called How to Be Happy Though Married.
I love this.
And
look at those.
Yeah, so there's one for me and there's one for Kyle, my husband.
What a great gift.
Yeah, she like wrote it and printed it, and there's all of these like beautiful images, and
oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's so creative and so artistic, and just like she has such a heart of gold. And
if you got a friend that'll make this for you, or you can, you got to keep them around.
Yeah. So I've known her all of my life, and I haven't like seen her physically since I was a little girl, but she always has like maintained this relationship with me, and she just like really understands me in a lot of ways. And so she wrote these books and had them made and printed them and have these beautiful photographs in them.
Wow.
And they're each different, and they're each like tailored to us. And she sent it to me wrapped in this beautiful Virgin Mary
look at
tapestry.
This. What the heck? I love it.
Yeah. So shout out to Mick. She's one of the best friends I've ever had.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's my other honorable mention that no one else could ever find or have, because it's only for us.
How gifts are meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
Gosh, the specificity.
Yeah.
And like creativity. There's just some people that they just do stuff like this.
That's her. She just like, and it's like nothing.
Yeah, they'll
It's
just make
like,
it. They have this compulsion, but in like the best way
Yeah.
to make stuff that is for people, and they're not going to ask for money and for it. You know, it's just
Right.
they are real artists. And I
Yeah,
think
and
that,
she's one of those people for sure.
oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, I thought if you're okay with us ending, it would be really cool for you to read the Billy the Kid poem that you
Okay.
have in your book, just because we talked about it with the first book.
Yes.
Would you mind doing that?
I don't mind at all.
Sweet.
And I should have that memorized by now for how much I read it, but I don't. Okay. Again, this was written in my 10th grade English class. And my teacher, she loved it. And everybody else was like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm like, what?
Shouts out teachers that get you, you know?
Yeah, she was amazing. She is amazing. Okay. Anything for Billy. I'm almost able to marry. I see him between morning hours in the yellow of the day, riding, half dead, half wounded, amongst big, friendly, spotted creatures. A boy, freshly 21, with liquor mud and marmalade blood caked defiant on his boots, bumping along the horse-brown thigh of his best friend. Both of them buck-toothed smiling, riding frivolous, riding knowing, riding uncaring in my country. He has matted chocolate curls, Manhattan boy, my Lincoln cowboy, coming to marry this Indian girl. His gun tucked away, always dangerous in the canvas of his underclothes. Petticoat armored, dainty waist, dainty wristed subjects swoon, and open their heavy doors to his please and thank you. For Billy doesn't smoke tobacco anymore. The time we spent in Lincoln was cradled in his belly after he took those daring mouthfuls of the soft, rich candy. It was the nectar of the land. The memory of us as children, scabbed, old blood mixing, carved in the pulp of his heart. I wore a blue dress with white lace, but then I took it off. I left them rumpled in the washroom and replaced them with jeans and boots, for Billy didn't go to church anymore. It was a lovely ceremony, and we lived unkempt and vibrant young in a house that we built ourselves. Before his death, we laughed 100 times each day and received light from that same yellow of the same day when I last saw him. I'm almost able to marry, but I already have. I always think of the time we spent together in Lincoln and the chestnut bitter, marmalade sweet promise between me and the kid.